Thank you for having me here. And my name is Naomi Freeman. I'm a property manager in New Haven, Connecticut. I represent a lot of small mom and pop housing providers, and which are increasingly becoming less and less due to the legislation that comes out of the Capitol. It makes it more and more difficult, which allows large corporations to come in. That's another conversation, though. I am speaking in opposition to Bill 5242. And as a property manager, I also strongly believe that housing should be afforded to everybody, and also that rehabilitation is 100% possible. Where it gets dicey, though, are who is rehabilitated and who is not. Regardless, I have worked with a program in New Haven, an excellent program that houses people that have served their sentences, and they have wonderful support. However, we have still ran into so many challenges and expenses from the people that they are housing. Smashed in doors, smashed in windows. Probably one of the most heart-wrenching stories is there was a young minority young lady that had gotten housing through a different program that was at the same building where people that had records were in. And from the best that we can make out, uh, one of the individuals that was with the ex-convict had somehow gotten into her home, her apartment, and intimidated to the point where she couldn't be in there. The only recourse that we had, uh, because housing providers are so limited in what they can do, is we had to evict her. So this poor girl who was just starting out was suffering the consequences of a ex-convict who had broken into her home and was just basically squatting. So the complexities can get really, really difficult, and that ruined her record right from the get-go. Um, the I think an appropriate solution is not having this on the backs of private housing providers. We're not qualified. We're not qualified to look at an application and to know, even from the papers that are submitted, because look, you can write anything on there to know, like, okay, yeah, this person is rehabilitated. How do we know that? We have no idea. I mean, so I would suggest, it's definitely a state issue, but having the person, evaluated, and it takes time, have them live in housing that is supported housing, not private housing, so that we don't have other members getting put at risk like that girl. I mean, there's many stories I could tell you. That's just one.
Your 3 minutes are up. Can you please summarize?
This is not to be put on the backs of private housing providers. This is a state issue. This will not solve the problem. I could speak at length of it.
Thank you. Any questions from members? Just very quickly, you spoke about the state kind of stepping in, and you said that private owners shouldn't be the ones that evaluate folks. If there was a mechanism, and I'm not saying that I totally agree with this, but just for the sake of clarity, if there was a mechanism in which the state did do these evaluations, and then through that process, if somebody was evaluated and it comes out that they are deemed, to be rehabilitated, would you then be okay with us putting in a bill with that provision? Meaning that if somebody
It's
is
too
deemed
simple.
rehabilitated, they can
What you said is,
obtain housing.
it's still too simple. It takes more conversation. That would be one of the steps for sure.
Okay.
But it's still a little too simple. It's a difficult issue.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Oh yeah, Representative Roberts.
Quick question. Thank you for your testimony. I think he kind of addressed it about the process of like, I want to say like a test, a mind test, whatever the case may be, to see if you were rehabilitated, whatever the case may be. In the sense of that, how would you think that process would help someone,
For sure.
as of course, a landlord, but knowing that person might have a 4-year-old daughter that needs housing as soon as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the lady that spoke earlier, we would have definitely accepted her. Like, of all the other parameters, Really, housing providers take all of that into account anyway. We look at your credit score, your income, your rent history. And we have a conversation, like if we see something that's on there, we have a conversation like, well, what happened, you know? And however, it has come back, even in doing that, it has come back to bite us, but some of that is the risk of it. But if there was some sort of a process, and again, that process, you know, that's a long discussion, and it would depend on how well that process was done, that, you know, they have been in supportive housing and it's been successful. That would be a much more comfortable thing. And the other thing too is people have mentioned that it's been easier to find jobs. Jobs get benefits for people, for hiring people that have criminal records or disabilities. Housing providers, we don't, not anything. In fact, we get penalized in a sense, because if we do have issues and we're forced to protect our properties, we have to, the only method really available to us is eviction. And then we have the, you know, legal aid coming in and making that what could have been a simple eviction into a long, extended, expensive process, further making rents more expensive, further, and all the time we're getting bombarded by the other tenants. They smashed the front door in, they did this, they're leaving beer cans. And so now, if somebody is a good tenant, we're not going to, you know, do eviction on them, of course. But for somebody that is causing issues.
And then my last question, you said, small mom and pop shops. So what does that mean?
Those are local landlords,
Okay.
and they have, you know, like just a couple of properties. So, and they're also the ones that are most willing to work with what's known as high-risk individuals, whereas the large corporate ones are less, I think it's more standard.
So that means that they would be in support of the bill then, right?
They would be more supportive. However, not the way it is right now. It's too risky. And it opens us up to liability of, you know, you didn't, you know, we're going to sue you. That's another thing. One of the person is like frivolous lawsuits. We've had to deal with that. I could talk at length at the challenges that we've had with these supportive housing programs in New Haven. And even though they have excellent support, the cost to maintain those properties is easily double.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Roberts. Representative Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for coming and share, you know. I got a question for you. Okay. When you just said to Representative, that mom and pops, the owners are willing to support the bill, but you said not as it is right now. You said you meaning about the new bill that we're trying to pass?
Yeah, not as it is.
Not as it is, the new
Right.
one.
Right. I mean, right now it is in violation of fair housing because we would have to give them special treatment. It's additionally in violation of contract law because the duress in contract law, if one of the parties is in duress, it makes the contract void. This puts housing providers in a state of duress from being really afraid of being sued or some of the different legal repercussions if they do not rent to an individual that they don't feel comfortable with. So, you know, and it's also a form of indentured servitude because it's not something they actually want to do with their property. So you really run into a lot of issues with this current bill. It doesn't protect the housing provider. I would urge that if you, like somebody else mentioned, there's a huge deficit of housing. It's difficult for everybody to find housing right now. And if you want housing providers to work with you, just like employers are offered benefits for hiring somebody with history or with a disabilities or a history, also like be kind to housing providers, like you know, work with us. We're happy to work with you. And we also believe that, you know, everybody should have housing, but this type of situation where we're not qualified for this type of situation. For people that have been reformed 100% all day, but how do you make that decision? And that's where I said, like, when I was talking to Senator Roberts, or Brown, sorry, it's difficult. It's not so simple. How do you know? We don't know. We're not qualified.
So you don't think that denying housing to people that apply for housing, you don't think that you're violating their rights just because whatever, reason?
I don't
If you
understand your
deny,
question.
let's say that you denied housing to people to apply for housing, and let's say they put an application, you don't think that denying the right, that you don't want to rent because they were convicted or whatever, you don't think that's violating people's right?
Well, it depends. You're asking a very simple question that does not have a simple answer.
Hmm, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other questions? Thank you.